And you lived where
In Taunua.
And where?
We lived in Taunua. My father's home was in Taunua. We had our own house, and next door to us was grandfather and grandmother Meuel.
Ah.
So the two families were close together.
And did your uncles live there too, and aunts?
No.
No, they had gone. Where had they moved to? Like Uncle Paul, right?
Uncle Paul was traveling. He was a purser on the Mariposa.
Uh-huh.
And so he was going, he was purser, and the Mariposa used to travel to Guam. And
Out of San Francisco?
Out of San Francisco.
So he basically lived in San Francisco then. But your grandfather had a little store in Tahiti?
My dad did.
Your dad did?
Yes.
Your grandfather was retired. Our great-grandpa was retired then,
Yes,
huh?
he was.
And lived
But
with your...
Papa had the store, and he had an associate named Max Kurka.
Max Kurka was in the store.
That's how my brother Max got his name. Was named for him.
For Max Kurka.
And Max was quite an artist. He used to design all the pareos. See, Papa had a dry goods store, and they used to order pareos for the natives from England. The weaving was done in England, and Max Kurka would design the leaves or whatever that they wanted printed, and he was really fabulous.
Did they used to export those back to England after they were printed, or were they basically
they were printed
just used in Tahiti?
They were printed in England and then sent to my dad.
And he would
You
sell
know, they
them.
came in rolls.
Uh-huh.
And the natives would come and buy, and they were very well noted for the best pareos in Tahiti, in Papeete.
When you were a little kid, how many people lived in Papeete? Not very many.
Gosh,
huh?
I don't know.
Was it like just a few people, a few?
Yes.
There was.
Yes. There were no cars. The traffic, were just horse and buggy.
I'll be darned. That's true.
That's how we used to go back and forth from Taunua to Papeete to the big city or big town on horse and buggy. My dad had two buggies. One was a four-wheeler when, the whole family could get in. And then when it was just him and the native boy we had, they would use the two-wheeler. And we had some nice horses.
Oh boy.
We had two of them.
Was it like a farm then you lived on? A few acres? Or was it just home?
Yes, quite a large property. It reached from the seashore clear to the back.
I'll be darned.
I don't know how, I would say about as big as, from our back fence
to the road.
Up to the road. Quite.
So you kids would all get to ride the horses?
No.
No?
No.
Papa wouldn't let you?
We'd get to drive the buggy sometimes.
Oh, that was good. That was good.
We had two pet horses. One was named Daisy, and the other was called Sapolio, after the soap. We'd call it Popolio. Daisy and Popolio were our two horses.
But you spoke only French, right, then?
Yes, only French.
Oh, I mean that was your native tongue there, so you spoke French.
Yes, sure.
Yeah,
but,
and you went to the.
As I got older and went to school, Papa decided that I should learn English. So once a week, we had English classes taught by one of the special teachers who spoke English. So I did know a few words. When I came to San Francisco, I could, knew a few sentences. I could speak a little English. But, oh boy, it was tough.
Did all of the kids go to, even down to Rita, did they all go to, or was she just a baby? Did they all go to?
Rita wasn't born when my dad left.
Okay. He had to leave when then?
1914 when the war broke out.
So he left when the war broke out, and your mother died in our grandmother died in 1918, 4 years later.
Rita was born 1915.
So she was born in 1915. Okay.
Well, you see,
Sure.
when the war broke out between Germany and France, they considered, there was quite a large German group colony in Tahiti. They were all together. They used to meet at our home on Sundays. The men would play cards and drink beer. And they were all put on Motuta. Motuta was the small island in the bay there at Papeete.
Oh.
They were put there like we did with the Japanese,
Yes,
during the war. Even though my father was born in Tahiti, he was considered enemy because he was German.
Uh-huh.
I never could understand that. So then the French government in Papeete decided that they could choose whether to stay there incarcerated or they were allowed to leave Tahiti and go wherever they wanted. So most of them left. And Papa left on it was a kind of a 3-masted schooner, and went to San Francisco because being in the dry goods business, he had connections in San Francisco. The firm that he dealt with was called Atkins Kroll. And he knew that if he could go to San Francisco, he could, get some work. And then he would send for us, maybe find a home and send for us. So that was the plan. He left us behind with my mother. And
did your grandfather have to leave too? Your grandfather?
No, he wasn't in Papeete at that time. He and grandmother had left with Aunt Sophie to go and live in Riverside.
Okay, and when was that
Aunt
about?
Aunt Sophie married an American. And after they were married, they moved to Riverside, where their son was born. So my grandfather and grandmother Meuel went to live in Riverside with her.
So that was before the war even?
Oh yes, long before.
Okay.
Long before.
Okay. The Papa John and those folks, did they live? They lived in town then, in Papeete?
Yes, right in town.
At the old house that we saw later, that was the family house, that's now torn down.
On Avenue Brua.
On Avenue Brua. That's where they all lived then, huh?
Yes.
Okay. And Chave had married Sarah Seeger, right? Is that, do I have that correct? Before, when Mr. Seeger came, Ebenezer Seeger came
from Boston, Massachusetts.
From Boston, and married a Tahitian woman.
Yes.
And
he had a native wife.
A native wife.
She was sort of related to
Pomare?
Sort of royal. She had royal blood in her.
And then they had a daughter, Sarah Seeger.
Sarah.
That was your
grandmother.
That was your grandmother.
Yes.
And that's why you have the name Sarah, huh?
That's why Sarah was named.
Sarah was
I was named Henriette after my grandmother Moyle.
Grandmother.
Her name was Henriette.
Henriette yours, huh?
Yes.
Okay.
Henriette yours.
Yours.
So of course, being the firstborn, I was named after my.
But you have. I see other
mother.
names you have on your passport. One is Sarah. Is that right?
No.
No.
Henriette Bertha.
Bertha.
Elvira. I don't know.
And then along Tahitian.
Who gave me those names, but.
Bertha with a T, so it was a German Bertha instead of Bertha. Anyway.
It's Bertha Henriette, but I never liked Bertha, so I
You always went by, even as a little kid, you were
by Henriette.
Henriette.
Yes, Henriette.
And how did Nunu and those other childhood names come?
I understand that Nunu was because Sarah and the rest couldn't pronounce my name. So somehow I got nicknamed Nunu. That was easier for them to say.
And Bill's nickname was
Willie.
Willie, and my dad was Goo Goo somehow.
Goo Goo, yes.
Goo Goo.
You know, we had nursemaids, and he was just a plump little baby, and they'd always try to tickle him, you know.
My dad?
Goo, 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 yeah, try and tickle him. And he had a little white spot of hair on his head. His hair was brown, and then there was one little spot on top that always was white. And they used to tickle him and get him to laugh, and so he just got the name Goo Goo. You know, in Tahiti, everybody seems to have a little nickname.
Yes, yes. Max was Maki, huh? Just Maki.
Maki,
yes. Maki. My dad used to tell me that white spot.
Sarah.
That white spot was a bird that came over.
That's what we used to tease him, you know, that he was under the breadfruit tree and a bird let go.
And he got the white spot. And Sarah was Lala because
Lala, yes.
Just whatever it was. And what was Rita's nickname?
Well, Rita was born really just before we came to the States.
So it wasn't.
So no, her real name is Marguerite.
Marguerite. So it was just Rita, probably. Yeah. And did you ever get to see or know your grandmother, Sarah Seeger?
Oh yes.
She was alive.
Oh, Sarah Seeger, no, not that grandmother. The other grandmother.
You got to know yours.
Quite well. Yes. Because when I graduated from high school, Papa sent me to Riverside for a week as a graduation present. I rode the train, went to Riverside to spend a week with my grandmother, Meuel.
Was your grandfather already dead by then?
Yes, he was already dead by then. She lived alone in a little apartment.
Down near Sophie?
Yes.
Near Sophie. So you didn't know Sarah Seeger, but you knew the Chaves, you knew your uncles? Was just Papa John was
the only one, because Uncle Dick was killed when there was a big,
He's buried in the cemetery there then, right or wrong?
No, he was never found.
At sea?
Yes, he was a captain, sea captain. And there was a big, what do you call it? Not tornado.
But a cyclone.
Cyclone.
Cyclone, yeah.
Yes. And the ship was lost. So Papa John was the only uncle that I knew.
In the cemetery there, your mom and your dad now, but there were a couple other...
Uncle Herman.
Okay.
My father's youngest brother.
He was a baby when he died? Or he was...
No, he was a grown man. No, he wasn't the youngest. Uncle Ali was the youngest.
Who lived eventually back in Germany then?
In Germany, Dusseldorf.
Alfred. But he never lived in Tahiti, Alfred. He went back to Germany, or
as a young boy.
As a young boy.
Yes, you know, they always went there for their education.
So he's
there, or even they would go to Auckland, New Zealand, to learn English. But no, Uncle Herman was kind of a cripple. He had, I don't want to mention the word.
I know, yeah. And he died. He died
yes.
of brain problems. When our grandpa, your dad's store, was it big, as big as your house, or a small little store like the room here, or?
Oh no, it was quite a large store.
Large store, huh? And he had not only just dry goods, or was it just
Well, I can't remember what else he had.
Probably food. I mean, could you go down there and have candy and stuff?
No, we never got to go.
Oh, you didn't go, because it was.
All I remember was, you know, stopping by from shopping or going to the market and going by Papa's store, and you could see the shelves with the pareos all lined up on it.
So he went to that island first, the little island in the bay, which is now gone. They've now connected it.
Yes, I know.
It's now connected. It's all connected as part of the bay now. But And then he stayed there for a year or so, or
Oh no, not that long.
just a short while.
Just a short while.
And remember the German people that lived in San Francisco that my dad and mom used to visit, and I think you used to too. They lived out in the avenues on 6th Avenue.
Ramkes?
No. Ramke was his...
Moot.
No.
Moot.
No.
There was a large...
And this was, I know that my dad used to go, every time we went to San Francisco, we'd go out and visit them. It was an old home, and they would talk about Grandpa, and all of that. So...
Must be the Moot family.
No, I will think of the name and then I'll mention it to you. But they were the only ones that I met. I know from pictures that Carol had that I now have.
You do?
I have some pictures that she had, and they.
You found the albums at her
some of the
house.
albums that were at her house, which I'm sure Rita has too, but they show pictures of a group sitting around. Apparently it was your father or your grandfather who was a great photographer.
My dad.
Your dad took
Yeah.
developed his own pictures and
That's
everything.
right, printed
okay,
them
printed them
himself.
and all. Well, what he would do is print them and send them off to them, and then they'd write a note on the back and send some back to him. And there are some notes in German I can't understand,
Oh,
but
my
they're
goodness.
there.
You should find a German.
I should find. I
translate.
will do some translation. Yeah,
Ah.
but they obviously they're a bunch of German folk, sitting in their very proper clothes and visiting, and so it's interesting to see. And
Papa used to take. He had a lot of. He knew a lot of Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
Who were merchants in Papeete. And whenever they'd want to go to China, he used to take their picture for the passport.
Oh.
So there should be a page in that album with some of their pictures in it.
Okay, I should look.
Uh-huh.
We have some loose pictures and some album. I wasn't even thinking I should have brought all those, and you could have looked. But I will next time. I will bring all those and make sure I bring the good.
Maybe I should come down.
You should come down, sure, and sure, a good reason to come down.
Absolutely.
Sure, it'll be good for you. Give your foot a rest. We'll make sure it stays up in the air. We have a nice private bedroom now, and we'll fix your foot in the air. Anyway.
Oh, shoot.
But those were happy days in Tahiti, huh?
Oh, yes.
Was your father stern as a young man?
Very.
Yeah, very serious.
Purutia.
What does that mean?
Real Prussian, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah. Strict, very strict.
And made sure you were...
Even after we came to join him in Fresno. You see, he remarried after Mama died.
Yes.
He remarried this Austrian woman, Herma.
The whole lady we used to call her.
Mrs. G.
Mrs. G.
I prefer.
Yes.
He met her in San Francisco. He and my grandfather, Meuel, used to go out to dinner at a place called the States Restaurant. It was the Hofbrau first, but during the war they dropped that name and they called it the States Restaurant. And they had little booths, and each one was named after one of the states in the United States. And they had an all-woman orchestra. You see, my stepmother belonged to this all-women's orchestra, and they used to play all over the world.
Oh my goodness.
And when the war broke out, they were stuck in, what is that peninsula that's off of Russia?
Oh, where Sakhalin or...
Well, anyway, they were stuck there, and they tried to get out. They were able to get out and come to the United States. The United States was still neutral at that time, and they got a job playing in this States restaurant.
I'll be darned.
So, of course, my dad used to go there quite often to eat, to dine, and that's where he met her. So after Mama died, he married Mrs. Meuel, Mrs. G. Herma, used to play the drums.
I'll be darned.
She was the drummer, and she also played the zither, beautifully zither. And then when they married, Papa took her to Fresno, where he had bought the farm. Somehow, after the war, or even during the war, the price of raisins went way up. And a friend of his, Mr. Baumgartner, talked him into going with him and buying some property in Fresno and tried to raise grapes for raisins. You know, that was good business in those days. So Papa bought some property in Fresno and moved us there, built a house.
Big house, big 2-story house, huh?
Well, it wasn't really too big. It just had 1 bedroom downstairs and 2 bedrooms upstairs.
Just, I guess I was such a little guy when I saw it.
It looked big.
It looked big to me, and when I went inside, there were these big high rooms, and yeah, was that
Sarah and I had the upstairs bedroom. The boys had a little tent outside.
Oh.
Bill and Herman and Max. They all slept in this little, it was a wooden tent, you know, with a canvas top.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Rita slept on what we call the sun porch.
Mm-hmm.
It was a screened-in porch, and there was one little single bed there. That was Rita's bed. Then that's
then
where Papa took us.
And when before we get to California, I go back to Tahiti a little bit. Your home there, it was as big as this house, or was it smaller?
Oh, yes,
or
a big house.
Big house, like many of the old big houses there. Then, like on Avenue Blua.
We had a porch clear across the front.
Mm-hmm.
And on one side we had the bedrooms,
mm-hmm.
the master bedroom and another bedroom for the children, and then the bathroom in the back. On the right-hand side we had a front parlor.
Oh my goodness.
A regular dining room with a big table where they did all the entertainment. And then the last room was Papa's den. He had a roll-top desk, and that's where his office
did his work,
yeah. And then between the house there was the kitchen. We had a passageway, and then the kitchen was off by itself. Big kitchen with one of those big old-fashioned stoves and place to keep the food. And Papa always had a hired cook. I think he was Indonesian. But he was a good cook.
Good cook, huh? Good cook. And then did that kitchen connect to your grandfather's place? No, that was just next door.
Yeah.
Next door.
We were separated by a regular fence.
Oh, wow.
Because, we had horses.
Sure. No, and how did you have a place in Papara?
Well, Papara was my mother's property that she inherited from Seeger. The old Seeger home
was on that property, where he is buried there.
Where he is buried. That was the old home. And my mother inherited the piece where Aunt Lily was.
Mm-hmm.
But during...
Yes, go ahead. Explain it. It's very hard to talk about it.
The French won the war, or the Allies, as you call them, they won the war. So we lost everything. The French government confiscated everything. My father's store, his business, his money, our home. My mother's property was all confiscated by the French.
And even though your mother was French and Tahitian, but she had married a German, that was her own, they still took it.
That's right.
Yeah. My dad used to say that...
And then it was put at public auction.
Uh-huh.
My mother's property, and the rest of it was put up at public auction, and Papa John was able to buy our little piece in Papara.
Right there in Papara, between the road and the water, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was able to buy that.
You used to go there every...
Build a little house for Aunt Lily to live on. But
somebody, Johnny has now built a little home there. I don't know if you've been there in the last.
no, I haven't.
Johnny
I couldn't even recognize the place. You know, the ocean during the rough weather
keeps
would
eating away.
Would keep eating away part of the land.
My dad said that the house used to be out in the water. What is now the water?
Yes.
It used to be, and it just keeps getting there.
Yeah, it's eaten up quite a bit.
Yeah, but Johnny had a house that wasn't finished the last time we were there. He's building. Johnny Vagabond, huh? He was building this place.
Well, you know, he has bought
yes,
part of Mama's property and Aunt Mama Patli's property.
Mm-hmm. That's not John, but that's
Toma.
Toma. Yeah, this
His
one
brother.
with John somehow had this one piece from his father, I guess, Papa John. You know, I mean from his grandfather.
Sonny.
From his grandfather. Sonny would be his father, right?
Yeah.
And his wife is a Salmon, huh? Sonny's wife. Salmon, right?
Yeah.
She's of that family.
Tootsie.
Tootsie Salmon.
Tootsie Salmon.
Tootsie Salmon, yeah. You know, they're related kind of around to several of the Taurus or Tauras. I mean,
Yes,
because of, people marrying cousins.
that's right.
But you remember going out to Papara? You'd go there for a couple of weeks in the summer?
During vacation time when school was out.
Well, your mother would take you out there and you'd stay?
We'd go out there and
Swim and...
swim, and not only that, but walk out to the reef. There was a place where the reef turned and bent and came right, touched the lands. So we could walk along the beach and then walk out onto the reef.
Oh my goodness.
And go, get coquillage. And
yeah. Must have
was
been
fun.
lots and lots of
That was
coquillage then.
fun.
Now they've harvested so much of it, there's not much left, huh?
That's right.
Coquillage. That would be like a little creek coming, and it was fresh water, so that's where the coral would start, right by the coast and work its
Yes.
way out. So you could go there and then, they still now do the competition for the surfboards right there in Papara.
In Papara.
Because of the way the coral is, they get really good waves through that
Yes.
kind of opening there. And they go there, and Noella's nephew, Wilm,
Is that right?
Iris's son,
Is that right?
competes, or used to compete. Now he
They
makes...
do surfing out
They do
there?
surfing, and they have competition for South Pacific, goes on there.
Oh my goodness.
And they have Americans now come. They pay the Americans to come down because it brings all the people out, and they get promotions and stuff.
Sure, good for the tourists.
This fellow I was telling you about, Paul Coulon, that bought the stuff for the house, he's related, his wife and Herman Meuel's wife are sisters.
Mm.
He was the boss of the surfing group
Oh,
down there. Yeah, he's typical of the way politics works. He wanted to. He has a way to build really good surfboards, and he wanted to have local Tahitians build them instead of importing them and having all the give some work to the local to the people.
Sure, that's
And they said, no, you can't do that.
Can't use them.
The reason why, when they were being imported, somebody was taking care of somebody,
Oh yeah.
Sub Rosa,
Uh-huh.
and they didn't want to lose that, so they didn't want to give the business to the local people.
that's
I mean,
terrible.
it's terrible, isn't it? But that's
Yes, it is.
sometimes that happens, and he was very upset. In fact, he's not very active anymore because of that. He just felt it wasn't
I don't blame him.
wasn't fair, it wasn't fair. I'm trying to think of what else in Tahiti before we come to the United States.
You know more about it than I do. Well,
That little
you know,
bit, that
I've
little
been
bit.
away for so long.
Yeah, that little bit you hear,
Yeah.
you see what's happening. There's so many things. They're very active for independence today, and that was kind of the movement that hurt Jacques Taura when he was the minister or whatever, because the local people did not want them to become more dependent on the French, But he realized that if they wanted a better life someday, they had to have help from outside. Copra was not going to give them a better life.
No.
Tourism even cannot give you a better life. There's not enough in it, you know.
That's right.
You have to have some kind of industry, some kind of support from outside.
Well, all they have are these imports from France, perfume.
Sure. You have the natural pearls, but that in itself
That's
too is,
only started
yeah,
lately.
Lately.
Not during my day.
Yeah, they were there, I guess, but they were, Papa John was very friendly with the bishop. Did you ever used to get to see the bishop?
Oh, yes, you know the good old bishop, when Mama died and left these little orphans, he used to send out one of his brothers on a little two-wheeler buggy to bring us some food.
Oh.
Bread. Uh-huh.
So
I think his name was Francois.
Francois, huh? I've seen pictures of Papa John and him together.
Mm-hmm.
My dad had taken some pictures. I guess he lived a
Yes.
long time. I mean, like your uncle, lived to a ripe old age. When you told me a little bit last night about when Lily was in New Zealand teaching, and she came home.
Oh, she had gone to visit friends.
Oh, she had gone to visit friends. And that's when you kids were so sick, and then your mother had been sick too?
Yes. Well, Mama took care of us first, you know, she nursed us through. And then she took sick herself, and there was no one to take care of her. I was just about 9, 10 years old.
Yeah. Well, you would be. We were born in
1905.
1905. Yeah. Yeah. So she was very sick, and then just after Lily got back, and then Aunt Lily took care of you then for a while, huh?
Well, she stayed with us.
Stayed with you.
Took care of us and got us ready to come and join my father.
Mm-hmm. And when she was teaching in the local school?
At one time,
Not
before she went to New Zealand, she used to teach at Miss Bonzi,
uh-huh.
the girls' school.
And that's where you went to school?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I got my certificat d'études.
Uh-huh.
I went all through the grades up until, you know, you're ready to go, like we would be ready for high school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I remember I still have my dad's first grade French book. He had that.
I have mine downstairs.
Do you? Yeah, it's a little, you know, and it was
Grammaire,
the little first grade grammaire, and that's what he was what, 7? If he was born in 11 and you left in 18, he was only 7, so he had just been to his first grade of French, you know.
Yeah.
And Max was 2 years younger, huh? He was only 5 then.
That's right.
And Rita 3.
That's right.
And Rita just 3. So you went to the local school, and in the summer you would go out to Papara?
To Papara for vacation.
For vacation.
That was always a wonderful time.
Did you have other family, relatives, or kids that were? Was it just your family, or you had a lot of friends, local?
No,
do
just the
you
family,
remember? Do you
just the
remember neighbor friends, or where you lived? You were kind of off by yourself.
Yeah, off by ourselves. No, there really was no close friends or what you would say a pal, because I had lots of brothers and sisters.
So you had lots of pals that way, yeah.
Yes.
Did they used to tease you?
Always.
They teased you and you. I mean, it was a fun-loving family. I mean,
the brothers. Even after we moved to Fresno.
Yeah.
Willie and your father, we'd be out picking grapes.
Yeah.
Or working on the yarn. Those great big green worms.
Oh.
Chase Sarah and me with this worm. They want to stick it down our neck. Oh, we used to hate them.
And they would do that in Tahiti too, huh? Even though they were little, or not as much.
In Tahiti, they were very good.
Very
loving.
If they got in trouble, why your Papa
loving.
would take care of them, or what?
Very loving. Oh, Papa wasn't there.
No. I mean, before he left, did they get the pom-pom now and again, a little spanking?
Well, I don't remember that they ever needed.
Uh-huh.
Any.
He was stern, but he was not mean then. He was, no.
No.
He just said
You know, we had rules.
Mm-hmm.
And we obeyed them.
Mm-hmm.
So we were never in big trouble. Besides, he was too busy downtown with his business and his friends and his club.
Uh-huh.
So
well, he was home in the evening.
We usually had a lot of servants, native servants, that looked after us.
So you had a good time then.
Yes.
I mean, it was really neat. My dad used to always say it was like we had a silver spoon in our mouths. We had a,
That's
right.
Right.
It was really neat when we were little kids there in Tahiti.
That's right. Well, you know,
he remembers them as very happy days.
My father and mother were part of the cream of the society there. There was an orchestra.
Ooh.
They went to all the concerts when there were big balls given at the governor's mansion. They were always invited. They were always part of the high society of the island.
And your grandfather and grandmother would go to these things too?
I don't remember Grandma and Grandpa going to those affairs because they usually lived, you know, by themselves.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So they may have gone, but you were not aware, but you knew that your dad and mother were, yeah.
My mother.
And this was because your dad kind of was in the business world?
Yes.
And knew the German and
right.
French?
And all his friends, you know, were members or part of that
group.
That group.
Mm-hmm. And you would have they would sometimes come to your house and have dinner at the big table and things like that?
That's right. We were entertained.
I remember some pictures I've seen of them out in front on your front steps. And there a bunch of older folks. On the porch. A bunch of older folks.
I have those pictures somewhere. I can't find them.
Oh, really? I've seen them maybe at Rita's,
In Rita's albums.
Yeah.
She did send me the albums once when we lived in Seattle, and I took out, you know, several that I wanted to keep.
Mm-hmm.
She said I could, and I've got them somewhere. I looked for them last night.
What Mary A has made copies of some of those, and she made us some copies. So I have some, and that's
that's wonderful.
Yeah, it's neat.
Wonderful.
It's neat to have these, and these are people. Boy, they are dressed up in their their bowler hats, and their a couple of them where they got the men have hats. Maybe I'm thinking of the ones that your father took that he sent back to Tahiti that might have been taken to Germany that he might have taken in San Francisco maybe, but they were probably in Tahiti it was white clothes and white hats because it was the tropics.
No hats.
Or no hats. Huh?
No, they're sitting around the table playing cards.
Is that it? I think I remember one though, kind of on some stairs. But anyway, it's so though your folks had good times there. Yeah. And your mother was how old when she died? Only
35.
35, huh?
So young.
She was a young, thin. The pictures we see of her, you know, pictures I've seen of her and pictures I see of Sean.
I have them in my bedroom.
I know. We have them at home too. And when we see pictures of Sean, it almost looks like it's her.
Well, Rita is the one who looks most like her of our family.
Mm-hmm.
I'm told I look more like Aunt Sophie. I favor the meuel side, but Rita favors the chave side.
Yeah.
She's the one.
Nina has seen some pictures, and we at a certain age when Sean was there, there she is, and she walks even. You know how Noella walks, very straight-shouldered and back. Sean walks that way too. We tease her, our Tahitian daughter, you know. Yeah. Well, if I think of more Tahiti questions, I'll come back to them later. But that kind of. You know, when you kids were little, my dad never talked very much about that. Of course, he was small. He probably didn't remember as much as you, but he just remembers it as good times, and that his father was strict. Of course, he was just a little kid then.
Yes.
You know, he was 7, so...
Well, you know...
You don't get into, you know, later on, I think he had some very hard feelings for his dad that he never talked very much about either, that we'll talk about as I get older.
I don't No, or I can't say because I was,
Gone probably,
off to
yeah.
high school and
Yeah.
college.
Yeah.
Rita would know
Yeah.
more because she was home. She stayed home. But there was some
Yeah.
trouble. I think the stepmother entered into it too.
Uh-huh.
Because I tried my best to get along with her just to keep peace.
Mm-hmm.
But like Sarah couldn't put up with her either. She left. She
Mm-hmm.
went to Fresno and lived with a Jewish family, the
Mm-hmm.
Epsteins.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Epstein owned a farm
Yeah, there were.
next to ours,
Uh-huh.
and your dad
Yeah.
and mother managed
Yes.
that vineyard for Mr. Epstein. I think that's where you were born.
We lived. I was actually born in Clovis,
In
but then I
Clovis.
know we
And then
went
they
back.
moved out there.
They moved-
Somewhere in my old pictures, I have a picture of
The three of
your
us
mom
at
and
Epstein's.
dad. Yes.
Yeah. And I know it was right next to where my dad was, and it's my understanding, although I've never been told, that we stayed there for a couple years, and I can remember going over to Grandpa's,
Mm-hmm.
your dad's, and we were, they would be sitting there and we'd sit very straight. It was not like, come over here, you little grandkid, I
Yeah,
want to
there-
love you.
there
It was,
wasn't there-
there was no showing of affection.
No,
And when I
no.
think back, that's probably, your dad didn't used to say, come over
No.
here and give you a big hug.
No,
But
no.
that was not their way, I don't
No, it
hold,
wasn't.
I don't hold that against anybody, but it's just that's a different perception,
Yeah.
and
No,
I think you probably.
That's something I have missed,
Mhm.
really.
Did your mother did though when you were little or
Oh,
not?
yes.
Yeah, she showed you
Mama
a lot.
and, Mama Patli and
Yeah.
Aunt Lily.
Papa John even.
We got, oh yes,
Yeah.
especially Papa John.
I mean, it would be that showing of emotion and
Yeah.
see. And I know my dad
But
was.
the Germans didn't
Yeah.
have, I guess it was just the way he was brought up too,
Yeah. You're not. You're not
No,
supposed to
you
show.
can't
You're not supposed
blame
to.
him
Shall
because
we
that's
go?
just the way he was brought up.
Okay, a couple minutes. We'll wind up. Good. Good. So I know my dad had a big heart and a lot of emotion, and
He was the brother I was closest to.
uh-huh. But he showed. I know. Sometimes he would be very stern with me, but also he showed a lot of emotion. He would kiss me
Mhm.
and hug me, and that was neat. But when I can remember it being kind of cold when I went to see Grandpa, and it must have been hard. I'm thinking back, it must have been hard for my dad, and probably for you kids too, because
Yeah.
you didn't get that. And then
No,
if his second
there
wife was that way too,
Oh, God.
you had a mother who was very affectionate, and then you lost her, and then you didn't have that again.
That was hard growing up.
Then it made a big difference when you
know,
started. You were a
going
teenager.
Going through puberty when
Sure.
you need your mother most.
Sure, and you probably think back and say, "Oh, if only my
I
mother was."
envy anybody who's
Yeah, yeah. That's okay to cry, Nunu. I cried too.
But Frenchie was the one I was closest to.
Mm-hmm.
He lived in that a little 2-bedroom apartment in town.
Yeah.
And one special year, Hiram had to go to Japan on one of his business trips. So he put Joan and me on the plane. We flew to Fresno. Frenchie picked us up. And we spent, I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks
Wow.
with him.
Uh-huh.
And during that time, Joan had a birthday. So he took us to visit Bill and Bee
In L.A.,
in
huh?
L.A. And you know what he did? He ordered a big birthday cake for Joan. Happy birthday, Joan. And we took that cake with us and celebrated her birthday with the rest of the family.
Isn't that neat?
I thought that was so sweet of him.
Yeah. You know, Nina and I saw Renee and Bee when we came back from Palm Springs.
Oh, she's
Still she's there now. She's back. She'd been to Minnesota, had a horse ranch, which she still has, but she left somebody managing the Lakeview Terrace Sanitarium.
Yes.
And the guy took her for $75,000. He ran off with the money.
Oh my goodness.
He took,
I thought her sister managed that.
No,
or what she called her sister was really her daughter.
I think, yes. And her husband, they called him Mouton Noir. The black sheep kind of teased him. He was a Mormon and he drank liquor, so they called him Mouton Noir, the black sheep of the Mormons.
Who? Bill's husband?
No, Joyce's husband.
Oh, Joyce's husband.
And he wound up taking over another. He wound up going managing and buying another rest home, and then he's now sold that, made a bunch of money off of it, and is retired. But they're split up, and Joyce is still there. She's had a breast removed, Joyce, like Nina. But anyway, Bee was looking good. She's 70, I think Renee said 75 or 76 now.
You know, I used to keep in touch with her, especially at Christmas time.
She's just back. She's just back about
all of a sudden she seemed to
because she went to Minnesota, Nunu.
Yeah.
She went off to Minnesota, and but she's back there now and lost a bunch of weight, living at the house, and Renee works for her and kind of has really looked out after her and told her what the problems really were 6 or 8 months ago, and they've had to, because of the earthquake,
Well, do they still run that home?
She still owns it and runs it. She almost lost it. But she has it back, and she wanted to be. I told her that I was.
What kind of a home is it?
It's a 90-bed hospital.
Oh, hospital.
For mostly veterans, all on Medicaid or Medicare or veterans benefits, and it's a.
I never really understood
healthcare
what the
hospital.
business
Yeah,
was
that's what it
about.
was, and it's been that way for 30 years. You know.
Is that right?
Since L&B, you know, there's still that big painting of Bill up over the fireplace. I don't know if you remember that. It's still there with his cowboy hat on and everything.
Yes.
Yeah, that's still there. That's a good picture. Yeah.
I have one on my desk.
So anyway, well, why don't we stop for a little while? I thank you a lot.
You're ready to go for a haircut.
Ready to go for a haircut. So we're gonna stop and give you a little rest too.
All right.
Okay, I'll turn it off and we won't change it. Wait.
To who? Pretty.
Here we go. We're all set. Now it's working again. We had a nice break. I went out and got a haircut from Fred Lee, who's big University of Washington booster in town and has been Uncle Hiram's barber for years and years and years, huh? Anyway.
He's a member of the lodge, too.
Yes,
Member of the Elks Lodge,
elk.
is he? Yeah.
He's also an elk.
He was happy to hear you had a new general manager and a new cook.
Yeah.
He wasn't aware of that till Chuck told him this morning.
Oh.
Well, he doesn't come around as often as he used to. That's why.
Anyway, so we're back to visiting some more. I wanted to ask you, just tell me what you remember of your mom and dad when you were in Tahiti.
Mom and Dad?
Mom and Dad when you were in Tahiti. I know you were a young girl then, you know, but what?
Well, I remember that they used to go to a lot of parties and always dressed up beautifully. That when the symphony was playing, they would be going, and they were invited to all the best places in town.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's a reason for that.
Yeah, they had hosts of friends.
Uh-huh.
Everybody in town. You know, they all belonged to the same social group.
Yeah, yeah. Were they around the house sometimes? I mean, days with you where they...
I don't remember much about what went on at home because we were always being taken care of by the maids.
Uh-huh.
You know, we had not only Tehei, the maid.
That was her name?
Tehei.
Tehei was her name?
Tehei was the maid. And then we had Nanny, you know, Marita.
Uh-huh. She was?
She took over when my mother's parents died.
Mm-hmm.
She was a native woman whose name was Marita, which is Margaret in Tahitian. And she came to live with us, and she was like a grandmother to us. We called her Nanny.
And she was your grandmother?
No, she wasn't really.
I mean, your grandmother's friend? She had lived with your grandmother?
No, she had lived with my mother's folks.
With the shaves?
With the Chaves.
Chaves.
Yes.
Who
That's
would
where
be
she came from Papara. She
From
came from
Papara.
Papara. You see, they lived in Papara.
And your mother and your grandmother was Sarah then, Seeger, right?
Sarah Seeger.
Married
I never
to-
knew them.
You didn't know them.
No, I never knew them.
They were alive though when you were a little kid, or
No.
they'd already
they were
died?
already gone.
Oh,
Only it says when my grandfather Seeger died.
okay.
18. It was in the 1870s.
Yes, yes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And his wife too then.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean his daughter.
Yeah. Where's the family?
Oh, where are they? Right here, right here, right here. Right here, right here, right here. Where's
Now,
Sarah
what I
Seeger?
would have liked, you know, to kind of talk with my dad, how he met my mother,
Yeah.
where he met my mother, and
Yeah.
all
Well,
that.
he worked for the SCO, Société,
Agricole?
no, Société Commerciale, was a German trading firm at that time.
Yeah, but where did he meet my mother? She was in Papara.
Well, I suppose it's some social.
I know how my grandfather Chave met my grandmother Chave. She was Sarah Seeger and was always invited to all the dances and the balls at the governor's mansion. And there was a group of officers that had come in on a battleship or a cruiser, and they were being entertained at the governor's palace. And of course, you know, with all these young officers, they had to have some young ladies to dance with.
Sure.
So one of them was Sarah Seeger, and she was very popular. She was invited there. And that's where my grandfather Chave
Richard
met her.
Branscombe met her there. Huh?
Met her there. Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
And her father wouldn't let her marry him because he was, you know, sailor boy, always
Sure,
gone,
sure,
and
sure.
he was afraid that her life wouldn't be happy, you know, with the husband gone all
Gone
the
a lot.
time.
Yeah.
So the two of them went to a neighboring island. I don't remember whether it was Raiatea. I think they went to Raiatea and got married there. So
And your mother was the. It was.
Eleanor.
Okay,
Eleanor.
Beatrice was born.
Yeah, Beatrice was the eldest.
She was the oldest.
Uh-huh.
Mama Patali was the
Mama
oldest.
Patley was the eldest. Uh-huh.
And then Papa John. Then Richard, who
Uncle
died at
Dick.
sea. And then your mother.
My mother and Lily was the baby.
And then
the
Lily.
youngest.
Lucy was the baby. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they got along fine. They had 4 children.
Yeah.
They got married, and you're, yeah. And they lived in town then afterwards, or do you know where the Shaves lived after? In other words, your aunts and uncles, did they live in Papara, or did they move to the big house in town?
Which uncles?
Papa John,
Papa
Beatrice.
John.
In other words, where did Sarah stay with her family? Because Richard Branscombe was out. Shave was out on the
I don't know where
boats.
they went to live.
Uh-huh. But
I
her,
really don't.
the older property was there where Seeger had the property in Paparado, huh?
That was the home.
Mm-hmm.
Now maybe cousin Margaret can fill you in on some of that. You know, she has all of Mama Patley's memories. And
Mm-hmm.
Mama Patley used to tell her a lot about the family. And she
Oh.
probably can fill you in where they were living
Okay.
on the Chave side.
Mm-hmm. But you lived in Taunoa.
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 I have to look at a map and see just where that is. I've heard it. I know roughly where it is, but I want to see
You
next
remember
door.
the racetrack?
Yes,
Straight down to the ocean from there.
from there. Taunoa is right in front of the racetrack. Yeah.
No, it's quite a distance away. They were
But-
on the beach.
Ah, okay. Okay. So it's from Hamuta down.
Yeah.
Down.
Or from Fautaua down.
From Tau down the
Well,
racetrack
that's a
there.
little toward town.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I'll look on the to see it.
What is that main avenue that goes down?
Photo Avenue.
Well, all right, it's, when you reach the water, it's to the right. Short
Yeah, to the
distance
right.
Huh.
That's where
And
we
it's
were.
between that road, that main avenue, and the Photo River.
Mhm.
Because we used on Sunday, whenever the Germans used to come out, you know, for the weekend, play cards and
Drink beer.
yeah, sure. We used to go early in the morning for a swim in the Photo River, and we'd walk along the beach until we came to the embouchure, you know, where the river
Goes
meets
into
sea.
it meets the sea. Yeah.
And we'd go for a swim there on Sunday morning, early Sunday morning after breakfast. And we'd see the nuttos jumping out from the...
So all the kids would go. My dad, everybody.
Oh, yes,
You'd go down
yeah.
and, like a troop, huh? You go
That's
down.
right.
If you try to catch fish in the river and all that,
No.
you know.
No, but it was a great time for us when they came out.
Did the nanny or the
Nanny,
maid go with
Martha.
you? Would they go with you, or
No,
just you kids
no.
would go alone?
We went with my dad.
Oh, your dad would
and
take
the
you.
fellas. Oh yes. All
Oh.
the fellas would go along too. They
Take a
liked to
swim?
go for a swim.
Oh.
Mhm. Yeah.
So you did see a lot of your dad around the house, recreation type things
Yes.
then.
Mhm.
Yeah. He got more serious only when he got over here then.
Yes, in California.
Changed a lot.
That's when, you know,
You could see
we
a
got
difference,
a
huh?
lot closer.
Uh-huh.
Because being a businessman, and of course the kids being taken care of
Sure.
by the nanny and all
Yeah.
the servants, there wasn't much interaction there.
Mhm.
He knew we'd be fed and
Uh-huh.
bathed and put to bed at night.
Wouldn't come
all
in and give
taken
you
care of.
wouldn't come in and give you a big smooch at night.
No, I don't. We'd probably
remember
be asleep already before
when he got
he'd
home. Huh?
come home.
But your mother would do that sort
Oh,
of thing.
sure, Mama would. Always.
Did she spend a lot of time with you during the days, even out and around the house? Taught you how to cook, maybe?
No,
No?
I wasn't old enough to
You weren't
learn how
old
to
enough. You
cook.
wouldn't get in her hair in the kitchen, or she had somebody cooking, actually.
No. Yeah,
She did, you had to cook the
we
Indonesian
had servants.
cook. Uh-huh. Made it nice then. You could enjoy things.
See, she was only 35 when
Yeah.
she died.
Yeah. Okay. When Aunt Lily brought you over here, came on a big boat. All of you,
Moana,
Moana,
Moana.
all of you together,
all of us together.
How
All
long?
of us seasick
seasick.
practically the whole way.
Oh,
When we got used to the rocking and rolling, it took us, gosh, at least 2 weeks to make the crossing. And we'd all be seasick in our bunks, really just couldn't lift your head. And after a while, you got used to the rocking motion. We'd have to go down to the dining room to eat. We'd grab a bite to eat and run upstairs to the
yeah, where you could be the.
where we could be in the fresh air.
Fresh air,
you
yeah.
know, so we wouldn't get
Yeah.
sick again because we couldn't stand the rolling motion when you see the
Yeah.
boat rocking.
So that was in 1918 then, actually.
Yeah.
Not too long after your mother died. Probably
Mama died, no, that would be
a
1919
year later.
because she died in December
Ah.
1918. We didn't get to come to the States until July. I'll never forget it because the day we arrived, you know, we had little cotton dresses, nothing warm to wear in July. It's very foggy in San Francisco. So my grandmother Moyle took us to the Emporium and bought us all outfits, from shoes to hats. She even bought me a big beaver fur hat.
Mrs. G?
No,
No?
Grandmother Moyle.
Oh, grandmother Moyle. She
Grandmother
met
Moyle.
you when you
Oh,
came.
yes, yeah.
They were living in Riverside already, though, right?
Yeah, but they came to San Francisco to
Oh.
to see us, to meet us.
Oh. With Aunt Lily.
No, Aunt Lily was with us, but Grandmother Moyle.
No, that's what I mean. They came at the same time, so
they
you
came, yes, to greet us, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and Grandmother Moyle, through Aunt's, let's see, Uncle Paul had married a Catholic gal.
Donovan or Donnelly or something.
Yes, Gertrude Donovan.
Yes.
And through Gertrude Donovan, Grandmother Moyle became acquainted with German sisters at St. Mary's Orphanage. It was called St. Mary's Orphanage. Was a boarding school for girls in Mission San Jose.
Mm-hmm.
Not San Jose itself.
No,
but
I know where. Yeah, I know where that is.
You know where Mission
Yes.
San Jose is?
Yes.
There was a sisters' house there where the girls used to join to become sisters.
Right.
And the Dominicans, it was Dominican sisters, and they were related to the sisters' convent. So Aunt Gertrude got my grandmother to enroll Sarah and myself as boarders at the sisters. Bill and your dad were enrolled in San Francisco at Father Crowley's school, which was a Catholic boarding house for boys.
Mm-hmm.
That left Max and Rita. Aunt Lily took them with her to Sacramento. She joined Aunt Beatrice, who was already in Sacramento. See, Aunt Beatrice was married to Sam Tooley. And Tooley had a sister who lived in Sacramento, so they all went up there to live with his sister. So Aunt Lily took Max and Rita with her to Sacramento to stay with the Tooleys.
Mm-hmm.
And while she was there, then she got the job teaching in a private school, teaching French at the Kinney School. But they all lived with the Tooleys in San Francisco.
What did he do? Just Sam Tooley. He
I don't know. I think he drove a streetcar. He was a streetcar conductor.
in Sacramento.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know any idea? I will ask.
You can, if you get a hold of Margaret.
I will.
Sometime
Yeah.
look her up. She's
Yes.
in Citrus Heights.
Yes. So that's
I
how.
can give you her address.
We have it.
You have
We
it.
get a Christmas card. We correspond every Christmas,
Oh,
just
good.
briefly.
You stay in touch.
She's remarried again.
Yes.
She's another.
She was at the wedding.
Yes.
Well, they were at the wedding.
Yes. He had his.
She has a
proper
nice husband.
Yes. But your Aunt Beatrice met him in Tahiti. Do you know that, or did she come over here and meet him?
Thule in Tahiti? Oh yes, they were married in Tahiti. I don't know what Papa Thule was doing in Tahiti.
Oh, okay,
But
okay.
they were married there.
And then he came
And
back
then
to
they
live
had-
with his sister, where his sister lived in Sacramento. Then they.
Well, you know, they had all these children,
Mm-hmm.
and
Sure.
his sister probably, wrote and told him to come.
Would be
Come stay in the-
get some nice work in California
bring
and so
the
on.
family.
Sure. Okay.
They had 2 boys and 3 girls. There was Sam, John, Lucy, Margaret, and Marie. Marie is Don Wackford's.
Mother.
Mother. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Margaret never had any children.
No. The your Aunt Sophie. Do you remember the name of her husband?
Isaac Logan.
Isaac Logan. I've been trying to remember. We met
Uncle
them.
Ike.
Uncle Ike. We met them, or met some of their kids, with Bee and Bill, with Uncle Bill. They had a big party after Nina and I were married. We were in LA. We went over to the sanitarium out, at the swimming pool and all. And some of their kids were there. I don't know whether they were Logan's
They
or.
had just an only son.
Well, then he had some kids.
He had,
Three
yes,
kids.
because he married and he went to college in Colorado College of Mines.
Yes.
He wanted to be a mining engineer. So I lost track of him then. But he was an only child.
But I think eventually he came back to LA and his kids lived there, because I remember meeting some of them.
Some of them.
That in those days I was 20, whatever I was, 30, and they were a little younger than me, but
Is
still.
that right?
Yeah, and.
Well, I really
So
lost track of them all.
Yeah. So then, after you were in the boarding school, had your dad married Mrs. G then? No.
Yes. Oh, yes.
They were married before you came over even? No.
No. They were married shortly after that.
And then you went. Then they went to Kerman? No, they were still up in San Francisco?
No, they went to Fresno.
Went to Fresno and bought the ranch?
Papa had already bought the ranch.
Oh, he had bought the ranch. And then when they married, she went down there with him.
Yeah.
So he was already ranching
The house. Oh, yes.
by the time you came over.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then eventually,
The house was built and all.
when that was all built, then you all went down to live down there. And that's when it was kind of hard, huh?
Yeah,
For everybody, huh? You when you went there, that's when you
Yeah,
started
it's-
Central High?
Big part.
That's when you started Central High School then, when you went there.
Yeah.
And you learned English quickly.
I had finished 7th and 8th grade.
In Tahiti?
No, at the Sisters.
Oh, you were there for 2 years
For
then?
2 years.
Uh-huh. And Babe also?
Yeah.
So you all had gone to school like that, and then when
Yes, I went to school at the convent,
Mhm.
St. Mary's Convent.
learned English?
Learn English. I was there for the 7th and 8th grade, and then we graduated. So it was time to move on, go to high school.
So then you went to Central High then in
No, I went to Kerman the first year because
First year.
Central wasn't built yet.
That's right, it wasn't built. Yeah.
It wasn't built yet. We didn't have a school district in Barstow. You see, my dad's ranch was in Barstow Colony, it was called, and all they had was a little grammar school. A little grocery store, and a little church. That was all there was there in the little town of Barstow. So I used to ride with Bill Montgomery. He was a neighbor boy who used to go to Kerman High School. He had a car. He took me, an Anthony girl, Clara Anthony, and Clarence Holland. The three of us used to ride with Bill back and forth to school. He would drive us to Kerman and then bring me back. I would get off at the Barstow store where my dad would meet me and then take me to the ranch. So I started I remember, I don't know whether I spent just my freshman year or my sophomore year also. I think just the freshman year at Kerman High School. By that time we had our own Central Union High School.
Yeah. And so the younger kids went to Barstow Elementary School.
Yeah.
All
It
of
was Rita and Max and your dad and Bill.
And Babe,
I
did she go to the Barstow school too, do you think? Or
no,
because she would not have been.
No, she finished 7th and 8th grade with me in
Oh, you
at
both
the
were in.
Sisters.
You were in the school at the same time.
Oh, yes, Sarah went to the
Same class even then.
same class as I did.
Okay, so even though you were older, because
Because
Sure,
learning the language.
sure, you had to learn the language,
There
so
was
you
no,
were
there was no difference.
no advantage or disadvantage,
No,
and I'm sure that in Tahiti you got a really good education. That school there was really good, I'll bet.
Yeah.
Learning your arithmetic and your, that kind of stuff, right? Because I've always heard that that's what was so neat about the older schools in Tahiti. When you
Miss
learn,
Moses especially.
who's that?
Mademoiselle Bonzi.
Oh, the gal that
Was
ran
the
the school.
owner.
She was the
Yeah.
owner. It was a private school then.
Mm-hmm.
Did they have,
Protestant.
did they have public schools too in Tahiti?
Yes, there was a public school.
But you went to the Protestant school, to
We
the
went
church
to
school.
École des Filles.
École des Filles. Huh?
And then Hiram's aunt, the one he's talking about, Aunt Maud, who was married to Mr. An, he ran the boys' school,
Uh-huh.
private school for boys. There was a big high fence in between, a big stone fence.
Did the boy?
But the boys used to wait for the girls
Sure,
out on the
sure,
road
sure.
after school and
Did any
carry
of your-
their books home for
Is that
the
where my dad went to school then? To the boys' school?
boys' school.
That's where he went that year that he had his French book. And it was
Yeah.
right next to where you went, but it
That's
was for
right.
boys.
Yeah.
And Uncle Bill went too there.
Yeah, that's right.
He was older than Dad, so Max and Rita didn't go to school then.
No,
They were not old enough
they
to go to
weren't. They
school.
weren't old
But the
enough.
four of
They
you all
went
did.
home.
Two to the,
That's right.
and by the time you came over
and then
here,
we'd have to walk home after school.
because that was in Papeete,
Mm-hmm.
so that was a long walk.
It was a long walk.
An hour
Back
or-
to Tamnoa.
An hour or so, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I'll be darned. Stop and play on the way home?
Stop and play or
Get in trouble?
get
Or?
in trouble with the boys along.
Oh, yeah.
And Hiram's dad had a business. He was in the milk business. He had cows. He was a farmer. And he used to deliver milk. We bought milk from him. We had a little box built into a tree, a little hole, you know, in the tree, and there would be this box where he could leave the 2 quarts of milk. And then on our way home from school, we'd stop in, pick up the milk, and take it home with us.
Sure, sure.
That was on the Fotawa Road.
From Papeete. It'd be along the coast almost, huh? You'd go around, yeah, a little bit, huh?
Not along the
Not
ocean,
right along,
really,
but it would, yeah.
but along that main road.
Who was Uncle Hiram's relation that had the big house right?
Charlie Brown.
Well, no, was that the one? I thought it was the lady that we met when first went with my dad. She had this great big house, all fenced in around around. They had like a patio all the way around, but it was closed in. Big green house, overlooked the water almost, kind of near where Noella and her mother and dad used to live. Close to town, no. I'll have
The
to
only
ask.
one I remember is Aunt Mary Ann, Charlie Brown's wife.
No, this was some. I'll have to ask. Hiram.
Joan,
I'll have to ask Hiram.
Joan, where are those pictures of Auntie Gwen's wedding?
Let me just make sure everything's going right here. Yeah.
Where is she? Snoopy! Come here.
I'll think of who it is. It seemed like it was somehow related with Park Doriel. No, that's a relation, Doriel Parkinson. Relation of yours? No. In Berkeley, in Walnut Creek. George Goltz. George Goltz. Didn't he have a sister or somebody in Tahiti?
Aunt Charlotte.
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 Her house.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
She had a big house, right?
Right next to Uncle Charlie Brown.
Okay, we visited there. I went with my dad to visit that house. It's now torn down.
The big house, yes,
The
it's
big house
gone.
is gone, yeah.
Was eaten by termites.
Is that what it was?
Destroyed,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah, but that's the house I'm trying to think of. And
that
it
was
was,
a gorgeous house.
it
Well,
was,
you know, he was a millionaire, Charlie Brown.
mhm.
Big property owner.
He's the
Lots
one
of-
that still has a lot of property on the other islands too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, after you finished school, you went to Fresno, went to high school. Those were tough times for all you kids then, huh?
Oh yes. Really
Shouting matches?
tough.
Shouting matches or?
Well, not exactly shouting matches, but you know, just obeying orders all the time. You had no free expression. We're always,
Thumbs down, huh?
well, you know.
Yeah, under the thumb, I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And did Rita actually, when she went to high school, lived with somebody else because of that?
No.
Rita, I mean, Babe? When she went to high school even, huh?
No, she finished high school at
Living,
Central.
living at home?
Yes.
Ah.
Even after I left,
Mm-hmm.
went off
To Fresno State?
Fresno State, yeah.
She stayed there and,
Till she finished.
but it was not a happy
And,
place, huh?
You see, through my dad's knowing the Epsteins' son was married and had 2 little girls, and they needed someone to help the mother, like a mother's helper. And Sarah got the job, so she moved right into town and lived at the Epsteins' with the young Epsteins'.
Into town meant Barstow?
No, in Fresno.
Fresno. So that's
Fresno,
after she
no.
finished high school.
Yeah.
And then did she go to Fresno State with you then?
No. She didn't continue any education.
Okay. You both graduated the same year from high school? She was a year behind.
The next year.
The next year.
But she stayed with the Epsteins to help with the 2 little girls. And then through my grandmother, Meuel, and through Aunt Sophie, Sarah always loved to take care of people. You know.
She had the
look
nursing
after
in her, huh?
Yes, and she wanted to become a nurse. So my grandmother got her enrolled at Los Angeles County Hospital. So she moved there to study nursing. They have a nurse's home where the nurses can live, and she spent I don't remember how long or how many years you have to study in order to graduate. But that's where Sarah ended. She went to Los Angeles.
And she met...
So she studied and graduated, became a graduate nurse, and that's where she met Herbie.
Herbie, she met there.
Yeah, she was a wonderful nurse.
Yes. Sad with all her operations and everything, how difficult that became for her, and you know, all the problems with the medicine and everything. And
well, I think really that her nursing career all had something to do with that, you know.
Yeah.
All the pressure and all, and the availability
of drugs. Yeah, but I've heard that she had those operations in her stomach, right? Didn't she had to have some operations, and then
well, that's because
adhesions and all the stuff afterwards made it painful and difficult. At least that's what my dad used to always tell me, that she had some real medical problems before she got into taking the drugs for the pain, you know. At least that was the way it was explained to me. That's pretty much true.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way it was. And did you used to go down and visit with her before you got married, or when she was down there? When you were going to school?
No.
No? You were busy going to school?
No, all we did was write back and forth, just corresponding. No. It was difficult
to travel and stuff.
Yeah,
sure.
just for a single girl.
Sure.
Well, even just to come home from Fresno when I was working, going to Princess.
Joan, take her outside,
Okay,
please.
it's dinner time for
Well,
her.
but take her outside,
Okay.
please. I don't want her in the picture if I
Yeah,
can
come
avoid
on.
it. Thank you.
Go. Whoosh.
Anyway,
No, even Dad had a car, and he used to, you know, Fresno was 10 miles from the ranch, and he would come in on Sundays. I had Sundays off, so he would drive in the morning and pick me up so I could come
So you'd come home for the day.
home for the day, yes, and bring my laundry or do whatever I wanted to do, and then take me back again that same evening. But it was,
And the kids were still, when you were going to school like that, the others were still going to high school.
yeah,
And
still home.
except Bill was working in Madera then.
Yeah, he had left.
Not too long after you left.
That's right.
He always had a wild temper, huh? Did he have the biggest temper of all the boys?
I wouldn't say he had a bad temper,
Didn't
but he's the one that I knew least. You know, that I because he left home. And of course, not having the college and high school education that the rest of them had, I think that kind of held him back.
I had, when they moved to L.A., he and Marge, and I remember Renee and Richard being down there. I would go down there and spend, like I used to come to your house, and spend time with Ellie and you folks. I would go to L.A. too and spend 2 weeks or whatever I would do, and I remember even I think when he owned or was bartending at the tavern, the Queen of Clubs, but I can remember riding in a big hay truck to Bishop and back. He would drive to Bishop, pick up a load of hay and bring it back, or to L.A. for people that needed hay, and they'd grow it up there. I can remember steering the big truck up the big steep hill because you could walk along the side. The trucks went so slowly. There was a big hill to pull, and then you didn't go racing up the hill like some of these big strong trucks do today. And I can remember having a lot of fun with Uncle Bill. Just because I got to go, and I can remember Marge. She would play the piano. And we'd sing songs on the piano, Renee and I, and we'd dress up like we were putting on a show and all this kind of stuff.
At the
No, not at the bar, but at home. At home.
Oh, at home.
Yeah, and it was kind of a fun place and things to do, and be able to go to the bar and there'd be shuffleboard there. We'd play shuffleboard in the bar. That's when I was probably even 10 or 11 or 12.
Well, that's part of my life. I know. I know nothing at all about that.
Yeah,
I was away.
94. You visited Ilex though, I guess, huh? 9405.
Only once that
Only
I remember.
one time, huh?
Only once I was at the house. I don't remember what the occasion was.
It used to be a long ride for us. I know we'd drive down and there was no air conditioning in the cars, and you'd put water, try to keep water and put a damp cloth over the window so that it would try to get cool, if you went there in the middle of summer up over the ridge route when it was a 2-lane windy road,
Yeah.
Then it became a 3-lane road, and then finally
It used to be quite a
that was a long haul. It
long
was
haul, yeah.
what
8
now,
hours.
That's right. What now is 3 or 4 hours, say 4 hours from Fresno, used to be about
I
8
know
hours.
it took me 8 hours to
From
go
Fresno.
From Fresno to
To LA, yeah.
LA.
And that was even San Fernando, it wasn't necessarily way down south.
Yeah, that ridge road.
And I can remember, well, when did your dad leave the ranch and move into town? To Butler Avenue, that's where he lived, right?
After he lost the farm.
After he lost the farm, and that was
They
when?
foreclosed on him.
Right.
Now Rita can tell you that because she was home and went through that.
She was living at home then.
Yeah, she stayed on because Carol was born and she practically raised her. She was the only one left at home, so she can tell you more about that.
So if I was born in 34 and Bill had already married, so everyone was kind of off and gone. Max, I don't know when he was married to.
To Mary.
If what's her name is 55? I don't know if she's as old as Nina or not, Mary A. I'm trying to think of how old Barbara and Mary A. are.
I used to have their birthdays.
No, I have them at
somewhere
home too.
in a
I'm
little
just,
book.
I hadn't thought about it, but So you lived in Fresno for going to school there for a couple years.
Hmm.
Not graduated, but then went.
Well, I got my junior certificate. That's as far as I could go
Uh-huh.
at Fresno State. You know,
Okay.
if you wanted to go on to college.
You
All
had-
they had were the first 2 years, and then you had to finish the last 2 years. You had to finish that at an accredited university,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So then you went on up to Cal.
to Berkeley, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And through the student council, I got a job living with the Haydens. He was professor of music at the University of California. And they needed a girl as a mother's helper, which
Oh,
I was
neat.
very well qualified to do,
Sure.
having, worked my way
Sure.
that way through
Fresno State.
Fresno State.
Yeah.
So that's what I did.
What did you at Fresno State? You basically took the the basic courses,
Just general.
general ed courses,
Yeah, general
and then at
ed.
Cal you had to get into a field.
Well, what they call letters and science.
Okay,
The College of Letters and Science.
kind of like liberal arts today, maybe, or something
Yeah,
like
something like liberal
that. You
arts.
take a
And
kind of a
course,
general basic
I
education.
majored in French, naturally,
Uh-huh.
which was wonderful. I
Sure.
had some wonderful professors. It was Professor Fay, he was head of the French department. And the other one was Mathieu Dondo, Professor Dondo. Oh,
Uh-huh.
he was a darling.
Did they encourage you to get into any translating or stuff like that?
No,
No.
all I did was get into the French Honor Society.
Oh, great.
I have a key, I'm a Pi Delta Phi.
Oh, good. No Alliance Française?
No,
No.
Pi Delta Phi.
No, I mean that.
Propagation du français.
Propagation du
Du
français.
français, Pi, yeah. Pi Delta Phi.
Phi, yeah. Because
French Honor Society.
they've had that through a gentleman that worked for me, Mr. Delmon, Delmon. His father was a chef around San Francisco. They had the French hospital, and then they had in San Francisco anyway. They had what was
We
called.
were associated with the French hospital.
Were you? Huh?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's where Ellie was born.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Oh. Even though you lived in Berkeley.
Yeah, we were members of the French hospital.
Oh. Well, you got married after you graduated from. You met Hiram at UC
I
Berkeley.
got married right after I finished. Graduated in May, got married in June.
Well, that was nice, huh? Yeah.
Like my dad said, all that education wasted.
But you
He
met
was
the love of your life. That's what that's about. You know.
Well, he tells me those brown eyes did it.
Uh-huh. And then, Hiram
It
was.
was funny,
That was in when? 1930.
1930.
1930.
Yeah, we were married in 1930. But on my birthday in 1929, when we were engaged and he gave me my ring, that Christmas we went to Fresno. We took a bus, Greyhound bus to Fresno, because we wanted to do the proper thing. You know,
Yes.
the young man has to meet the
Sure.
girl's father and ask
For his
for
hand.
her hand.
Her hand, I mean, yeah.
So we rode the Greyhound bus. It was an overnight trip. It was awful
Oh, my
because
goodness.
people were smoking and they were talking. You couldn't sleep. It was a long ride. Also, I would say 8 hours. But anyhow, we made it. And Hiram went through you don't call it a ceremony,
But yes.
and my father, he was kind of tickled about it because he said, he said to Hiram, before I met Henriette's mother, my best girl was your Aunt Lottie.
Hmm.
She was my best girl.
I'll be darned.
So I know your whole family.
Oh.
In fact, Lottie's brothers were kind of some of his pals that they used to pal around with. So he says, you kids are taking up where I left off.
Well, wasn't that nice? Huh?
Because that was his best girl, Lottie Walker.
I'll be darned.
And
That was Hiram's aunt.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one of his father's sisters
Mm-hmm.
was my father's best girlfriend.
I'll be darned. So even though you weren't going to do whatever you were supposed to do after college, it was still okay then?
Yeah.
Well, that's nice, because if your father
But
had been...
I never got to work.
Yeah, yeah.
I did go during my last year at Cal. I did go over to San Francisco and work in a, it was a car
Agency, like?
car agency up on Van Ness Avenue.
That's where they
Graham
were.
Page.
That was Automobile Row.
Yes. But I was working in the office there. They were doing a lot of advertising and I had to stuff envelopes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Was it hard to get jobs in those days? I mean, like
Yes.
when Uncle Hi got out of college too, was it hard to get a job, or
Not for him.
no? What had he majored in? I'll ask him that because I want him to say something.
Well,
Excuse me.
he finished school in Papeete. Then he came to San Francisco through Mr. Kugelberg.
Oh, he finished his
He's
Bach.
finished, yeah,
He finished the Bach in
his certificate and what is the next step? Brevet.
Mm-hmm.
He finished all that in Papeete. And
Did he
then
come
he wanted to come to San Francisco to work.
Oh.
And through Mr. Kugelberg, who was a steamship agent, who was his Uncle Charlie Brown's agent. You know, he used to, whenever Uncle Charlie Brown needed stuff from the States, that was his agent to get the stuff to him.
Amy's husband.
Yeah. So Frank Kugelberg got Hiram a job at his company, which was Williams Diamond.
Williams Diamond.
Mhm.
I thought you met at the university. You didn't meet Uncle Hi.
No, I met him at his aunt's house or his aunt's apartment. How it started, Aunt Lily used to come to Berkeley during the summer.
Your aunt,
Yeah, Aunt Lucy.
Lucy Lily. Yes.
From Sacramento.
Yes.
She would teach at the private Kinney school, and then she would come down to the university. She always loved to study and improve.
So during the summer, she took summer classes.
She took summer classes. First she got her AB, and then she wanted to get an MA.
Oh boy.
So she used to come to summer school. And one day, she came to my rooming house. I had a room with a family. And she said, Henriette, would you like to go with me to San Francisco? You know, this was on a weekend. She says, I want to go and see Esther Higgins because I have heard that, what was her name? Leonie Copenrat, who was a very close friend of hers, is at the French hospital. She's had surgery and I want to go and see her. So she took me and we went to San Francisco. Their apartment was on Larkin Street,
Mm-hmm.
and Hiram was living there with his Aunt Esther and Uncle Warren. They had a big apartment. Hiram was living there and his brother Albert with the aunt and uncle. So we went there to find out how to get to the French hospital because Lily wanted to go and see. And while she went, took the streetcar, went off to see her friend, visit her friend at the hospital. I stayed there and, you know, kind of got acquainted with them. Well, Hiram's brother Albert talk to me, entertain me. We played records and talked. Hiram was out in the kitchen most of that evening. He was getting ready to go hiking. Every weekend they used to go over to Marin County and hike, going
Mount
hiking.
Tamalpais or
Yeah.
something, yeah.
So that's where I met Hiram.
I'll be darned.
Because he came out then and met me and talked. And of course, we talked about hiking and how I would love to go and hike too. So I was invited to come the next weekend,
Well,
and he
good.
took me to
Up to the
Marin
top of the
County.
mountain.
We went
huh?
hiking and
Isn't it?
camping.
That's how you met.
That's how I met him.
That's how you met.
Yeah,
And he then worked for Williams Diamond.
Williams Diamond in the steamship business.
Then a
He
year-
started as their office boy.
Isn't that a
You know,
story?
come
Sure.
get there early,
Yeah,
distribute the
sure.
mail to everybody.
Gopher, they call him, right? He's a
Uh-huh.
gopher. You go for this and you go for
Yeah,
that.
That's
And
right.
it's amazing to see from that beginning all the way to
But he
president
learned the
of
steamship
president of
business.
American Mail. That's right. You learn it from the bottom up that way. Nobody gives you anything for nothing, right? That was in 1930, huh? 30,
Oh, would be 28, 29.
28, 29. And then when you graduated from college, you were married. Then did you live in Berkeley right after that?
Yeah.
You moved to Eunice Street?
This same professor that I worked for while I was going to Cal had a little apartment. They lived on a sort of a hill. And the basement of their house, one side was the laundry, and the other side was a little one-bedroom apartment. Bedroom, kitchen, and living room. And so we rented that. Hiram and I moved in that little apartment when we were married.
And that was Eunice Street? No, that was near there. huh?
On Eunice Street, yes.
And then you eventually bought the house, or you eventually
Yeah.
you bought that same house?
No,
Or no, you were kind of next door, nearby,
across the street.
across the street. Because I remember how beautiful that was. You had the bay window, you could see San
Mhm,
Francisco and everything.
No, we bought the house across the street. It belonged to a preacher,
Mm-hmm.
minister, Corwin Olds.
I'll be darned.
Uh-huh. He was transferred from Berkeley. He was transferred over to San Jose to take care of a church there in San Jose. So
So the
they had
house.
to sell the
sell the
house.
house.
Uh-huh.
We've been going a long time. You want to rest a little bit? Or you want to talk
It's
a little
all
bit
right.
more? You're doing fine. This is fun, huh?
I am.
And your foot is doing good.
See?
When Uncle Bill who got married first? Well, I could look and see, but did my dad get married before Uncle Bill? Uncle Bill got married first, huh?
I have no idea. I can't
See, Renee and
because
I.
that part.
Let's see. I was born in June, and Renee was born the following April.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm going to ask my Aunt Bertha. I don't know how long my mom and dad. It seems like Uncle Bill knew Blanche. Uncle Bill knew
Hiram
Blanche.
and I were already living in Berkeley because I remember your grandpa
Coming up
Papa
there.
Mesplay and his wife and your dad and Elise coming to visit us one day.
Her name was Henriette aussi. Do you know that? Henriette, my grandmother.
Is that right?
Henriette Vincent. Henriette Vincent. Her maiden name was Vincent.
Oh,
Henriette. Grandma. I always said grandma, but her name was Henriette
I didn't know her too well.
Vincent. I can remember when I was little tiny that my mom would always, we lived at Pickens next door, the apricot place that we just sold. We would go over to my grandmother's and she'd be cooking a lot in the kitchen and we'd sit and talk and my grandpa'd come in and eat and then he'd go out and I'd go out with them. And so as a little guy, I spent a lot of time over there. But see, I was the oldest and only grandkid for a while because Larry's only 50. I'm 5 years older than Larry.
Mm-hmm.
He's 53 or 54 now and I'm 58.
Well, Elise
And,
was also the older of the three girls.
Yes,
There was
Yeah.
Blanche and then Bertha.
Blanche and Bertha,
And
right.
neither one married.
No, no. And my mom was 19 when I was born, 18 when they were married, just 19 when, you know. And I kind of have a feeling, I don't know whether my grandpa was very angry about it or not, but you know, they were married in December and I was born in June, so obviously I was conceived before they were married.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know whether he used to hold that against her or not. He used to be very mean sometimes to my mother. You know, and criticize her, and I think she always
He
wanted.
was a rascal. Didn't he drink a lot of wine?
Well, he drank a lot of wine, and he used to make it tough on the kids.
Yeah,
He'd get pompetta, as they say, which is a little bit tipsy or drunk, you know.
I know even after he married Fay Lee, she claimed she fished him out of the gutter.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah. So he was kind of a rascal. You're absolutely right.
Yes.
And so I don't know, you know.
Whatever happened to Fay Lee?
She has passed away. She lived in a home in Fresno.
We used to correspond.
Yeah,
I remember.
yeah. About 3 years ago she died.
Oh.
We were away when she died. I was in Tahiti or somewhere when she passed away.
Oh.
So I didn't.
She lived as long as 3 years ago.
Oh yeah, she was 90, more maybe.
For heaven's
3
sake.
or 4 years ago. Yeah,
She was kind of fun.
Yeah, she was a kick. She was a kick.
Yes, I always
She
enjoyed
was a kick
Fay Lee.
and very independent kind of, you know, and she used to like to
Yeah,
talk.
a little
Loved
pepper pot too
Like to talk,
sometimes.
yeah, yeah. See, my Aunt Blanche was kind of the governess of that family. She was kind of the Mrs. G of that family.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and she was the one that was going to take the responsibility to make sure that everybody did what they were supposed to do, type of thing almost. And so I've often wondered, and I didn't know how much you knew about the Mespels actually. When the kids were little, did you know much, or did I know?
not
Well, of
too
course,
much,
Max lived
no.
close, and they were close. You know, they used to do things together. I know when they, you know, they lived there on Herndon, and then Bill was in L.A. But I didn't know when he moved to L.A. He got married in Madeira.
Who?
Uncle Bill,
I guess.
Marge.
I guess.
Married Marge there, and when your dad was
I
unhappy
guess.
about it. Yeah.
Uh-huh. That part is blank.
Hmm. But Rita probably will remember that
Yes,
because she was
will,
home.
because she was
You'd gone
still
off
at
to
home.
school, yeah.
Yeah, you see, I used to come home only on Sundays, and
Hmm.
there wasn't much that they could bring me up on.
Yeah.
That I could catch up with.
Yeah, it's kind of tough too. I always had the feeling that my dad didn't feel like he was welcome to go to his dad's house.
Mm.
And I don't know whether that was really true or not, you know. We used to go and visit occasionally. My mother was kind of like we were on display almost, you know, or being passed judgment upon or something. I don't know. That's a feeling I had as a little tiny kid, and whether it was true or not, you know, it just may have been because it was so somber there. Seemed like it was.
Could be.
Seemed like it was
Yeah,
a dark,
it was-
dark and forbidding place almost.
Those were
Those were bad times for
real
you, huh?
bad times
For all of you, then it sounds
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Even Rita, over the phone not too long ago, mentioned to me that Mrs. G always resented her because she of all the children looked more like my mother and always reminded Mrs. G of my mother.
And your dad too, probably. In other words, that would be bad
Yeah,
for
well,
you.
of course, Papa was very sweet to her, to
Yeah.
Rita.
Uh-huh.
And so it made Mrs. G very jealous,
Yeah.
and she always resented Rita.
And you know, that's hard
because
because
it stirred up
Sure.
this memory of the first wife in
Sure.
her. I didn't know that until Rita told me the other day. We were talking about it
Uh-huh.
on the phone.
How is she feeling? Pretty good?
Yeah,
Good. Good, good.
yeah, she went through some tough times too. You know, hurt her back.
Fell down?
I think she fell off a ladder
Oh, my
trying to
goodness.
pick some avocados.
Oh my goodness.
Slipped and fell off a ladder, and she hurt her back very badly. Oh,
Yeah.
For years she suffered with it.
Well, I told Mary A when I get home, I want to take this camera too and go with Mary A down to see Rita and just do this with her too. And
Oh, sure.
because it's so neat
Do-
for us. It's so neat for us.
Yes.
And
Well, you do that because she can fill in the
yeah,
blank
yeah.
pages that I leave.
And, because it's funny. My dad, we used to talk about things, but not a lot about his family. Not a lot. He would talk about you and talk about Rita and the kids, but not about his
Well,
mom.
we really got closer, after I was married and I was on my own. And of course, they used to come up to Berkeley, and we'd all come up to Mont LaSalle
Sure,
to see you.
Sure.
So that.
Although I remember when I was probably 9 or 10, VJ Day. Let's see, that'd be I was 12. When the war was over, I was at your house.
Yes, you were.
And
I
we
remember you and Ellie had
going
walked
down.
downtown.
Yeah, we bought an ocarina and blew noise like everybody else did. Yeah.
You had gone down for a milkshake
Yeah,
someplace.
yeah.
There was a
Just
place downtown
right-
that had milkshake.
Right there on Shattuck by Live Oak Park.
Mm-hmm.
And and I can remember the street spilling over, everybody
Yeah.
coming out, and it was a big celebration.
I remember coming
you
down
know-
Shattuck Avenue, and here the two of you were walking along, just having a great
Yeah.
time.
We used to get on the red car and go over to the Playland by the zoo. Remember that too?
That's right.
And you used to cook
Fleischacker Zoo.
Fleischacker Zoo and the Playland that was there,
Yeah.
which is all gone now. No more Playland. It's apartment buildings.
Is that so?
Yeah, and the old
Sutro Bad?
is all burned down.
What?
That burned down. The Sutro baths are no more. You see a big hole there, and you see the one big cement, what used to be the big pools,
Oh.
all burned. The Seal Rock place, there. That basically one little place is still there, and they've added some new little.
What were we doing there that one day?
Recently, when we drove over, you mean in the last few years,
Yeah,
or a
last
long
few-
time ago? We might have taken a tour back through there.
It seems to me that we were there, and
Just to see the sights of San Francisco again, maybe? When you were down visiting, when you were down with Joan, I think we might have just driven around there
I think so.
through San Francisco. And I might, those Sutro baths are gone now. And Fleischacker,
Cliff House.
the Cliff House, that's the one. Yeah, we might have stopped there then and,
Yeah, we
and
did.
looked at the Cliff House again, let you see all that again. I bet that's what we did. Because that was neat when you were down about 5 years ago.
Is it?
We canned pears and all that kind of stuff from my backyard. It was goodness gracious. Anyway, yeah, but yes, you'll have to come
I'll
down
have
again.
to come down again.
Come down again.
Because Joan just loves to come down.
Yeah, well, and we're sorry she couldn't
she
come.
tells everybody around Mount Vernon she's going to have her vacation. What are you going to do on your vacation? I'm going to California.
Last year was just really tough with Nina's, with the kids' father dying, Tori's father dying and everything. There was no way, but we think this summer, as it gets into summer, we'll have some time where she can.
I think I'll make plans to come down.
That would be
with her,
great.
Because she doesn't want me alone.
Well,
she
but that's
wants to
all right.
travel alone.
That's all right. You could come for part of the time, and she's or whatever. and well, I'm sure what's really nice is,
Because
what
all
I'll
the
do.
girls are gone, there wouldn't be anybody there at the house but you and Nina, and the two of you
We
are
have-
busy with your business.
No, we'll work it so that one of us will be there. Not a problem. And you know what? Well, if you make a plan like that, I will arrange with Mary A. and I'll arrange with Renee to come up to my house. And we can,
Yeah, it'd be kinda
Barbara,
nice,
maybe
because
Barbara,
I
Barbara
also-
can come up too,
I also want to look up this friend of mine.
Maybe we can get Margaret
the
to
McCormicks, they
Okay.
lived on Acacia
in Berkeley.
in Oakland.
In
They
Oakland?
were in that big fire.
Oh,
They lost their house. Everything was burned
oh
down.
my goodness.
They were underinsured.
Yeah, like so many.
But they have rebuilt, and in her Christmas card this year, she said, we've just moved back into our new house. It's rebuilt on the same spot.
I'll be darned.
And she said, it's more beautiful than we ever imagined. And she said we had Christmas dinner for 12
In the new house.
in the new house. So I really would like to go and see
Oh,
her.
you should.
It's on Acacia Avenue in Oakland.
Okay. We can do that, and
I would-
I'll get Margaret to come over too from
I would
Sacramento.
love to see her.
We'll have a big get together, you know. That would be fun. It would be
Oh,
good
Margaret
from Sacramento.
Sacramento.
Okay. Let's plan on that. We'll kind of look.
Just let us know when you have free time.
Okay, because you're basically you can.
Yeah, we can arrange our schedule to suit yours.
Okay, let's do it. What I'll do is try to make arrangements with Renee, and we might even talk her to try to bring up Aunt Rita, because
Oh,
it's kind of in the middle, you know.
yeah.
Instead of us all getting there and then going farther, maybe they could come up. You know.
That'll be nice.
It would be nice.
Instead of a wedding, it'll be a family
Just
reunion.
a family reunion, yeah.
Oh, that was so
Family reunion.
nice.
That would be nice. Yes, it
Small's
was.
wedding.
It really was. They're really, well, they're neat. They seem to enjoy each other, and it's nice. Yeah. Well, let's take a little rest.
Okay.
Then I'll talk to Hiram for a while, and then I'll think about it, and I'll have some more things.
Yeah, he can tell you his side of
some
the
more,
story.
some more things to ask you too. There's some I know that I've jotted down, but I don't even want to bother with them now, and we can take a little rest.
And I'll keep looking for those pictures.
Okay.
Let me go through some more
Very good.
drawers. Oh, here are those pictures, right?
Are they?
here.
Okay.
Shoot. Me racking my brain. I had them all ready all the time for you.
Did tell when you met. She told me a little bit of the story, what you were doing, working for Williams Diamond and living with your aunt.
Living
aunt
with
and
there's-
aunt and Uncle
there's
Higgins.
Aunt,
And brother.
And brother, yeah.
brother Albert.
And you were off in the kitchen doing all the stuff, getting ready for the hike, and Albert was
Yeah,
entertaining
going
her,
camping.
and
He
yet you
was
were the one that
packing.
hooked her.
He was packing his, oh yeah, these are all good old pictures. There's Mary and her little girls.
Now it's working. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Fine. Just fine.
Just fine. Well, I've had a nice visit with Aunt Nunu, and now we're going to have a little visit. Be very interesting for all us youngsters to hear about your background and your family, and many of us have been to Tahiti and meet Walkers there and know about the Walker family and the history of the Walker. So this will be fun and interesting and part of our heritage too. So it's nice. You mentioned you could tell me how originally your family came to Tahiti to kind of start
Yes.
way back. And
All right. First of all, I was one of a family of 10. 8 boys and 2 girls. The third son didn't live. He was born prematurely. And so there were 9 of us who grew up. The eldest was Theodore, or Teddy as we called him. The next one was Everett. And then came my sister Claire. And then came Albert and Edward and myself and Stanley and Lawrence and Gwen. Gwen is the baby.
so Gwen is the baby who lives in New Zealand,
She
huh?
now lives in Wellington, New Zealand, yes. My paternal grandparents came from England. My paternal grandmother was Scottish. My paternal grandfather was an Englishman from London. Interestingly enough, both of my grandfathers were sea captains. Grandfather Walker came ashore, however, after going to sea for how many years I don't really know. But anyway, he started up an import-export business in London. How he met my paternal grandmother, I don't recall. But anyway, they were married and lived in London where he had his business. Her father worked for the London Mission Society. And the London Mission Society was the early British people who went out to the islands ostensibly to Christianize them, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that gentleman's name was Henry. As I mentioned, he was a business agent for the Londoners, and ultimately he became
Go ahead.
a minister himself, and his final tour of duty was in Australia. My cousin in Honolulu has a great deal of the history of Reverend Henry, particularly during his period in Australia. And he had, while I was out there during the war, told me about the letters he had received, or his mother had received from the Reverend and so forth. His name was Kenji Kimball, Kimball, and his mother was the sister of my paternal grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, the family, after hearing about these wonderful islands and so forth from Henry and his wife, decided that they'd go out to visit Tahiti to see what was real. In those days, everything was by sailing vessel, of course.
How long would it take you to get from England to Tahiti then? 2-3 months?
At least.
At least, huh?
Yes. And they loved the place so well, they decided they would come back and settle there, raise their family at Tahiti,
Thank goodness.
which they did after going back and getting their furniture and belongings and so forth. So all of my parents were born in the islands. My father was born there, and so on down the line. The Walker family, well, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. My father's father also was named William. My father's name was William Francis. And they raised, let's see, I'm trying to think how many children they had. They had quite a few. Three boys, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 boys and 4 girls, about 8 or 9 children. Big families in those days.
Yes.
How they managed, I don't know, but they did very well. So that's how we came about. Ultimately, my father met and married Teresa Higgins, who lived on Raiatere. That's another interesting story. Her father was a Scotsman, an engineer, who had followed the missionaries out there and fell in love with Raiatere as a place to live and raise his family. And he married my maternal grandmother, who was one of the princesses of the royal family. So he was in, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a large family. My mother was probably in the pecking order about 4th or 5th, I think. And Stephen Higgins was the baby of the family, and he was the one who married Leah Levy and raised their family. So the Walkers are
Yes.
a fairly large clan, if I may call them that. And that's how I ultimately came into the world.
Your mother's name was
Teresa Higgins.
Teresa Higgins.
Mhm. Her father's name was Lassiter, I forget his first name.
Mm-hmm.
But he was a Scotsman, from, an engineer, came out from Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather, who was a sea captain, as I mentioned, maternal grandfather, who was a sea captain also, had the sailing vessels which he operated between San Francisco, Honolulu, and Tahiti. He had 2 or 3 of them. And the company I ultimately went to work for in San Francisco, Williams Diamond and Company, the senior partners were his agents in San Francisco. And of course, through their connections in Hawaii, he used those people as his agent in Hawaii. And ultimately, he came ashore and opened up a general store in Raiatea. And I remember as kids, the place had been closed then after his death, and there was no one willing or who cared to carry on the business. We used to sneak up on the roof and get through a window facing on that roof and went in there exploring, you know. We never touched the doors. We went back the same way we came in. Of course, my aunt and uncle knew what we were up to as long as we didn't break things.
Do any damage, it was all right,
Yeah,
huh?
actually, we were after, as I remember it more often than not, we were actually after thread and fish hooks.
Oh.
We love to go fishing, you know. And we got them in there. I brought food to the table.
Sure.
So there was no objection.
Yeah. But it made some excitement for you as kids then,
Few
huh?
interesting human stories like
Did you grow up in Raiatea?